The neighbours heard the axe strike wood. Then silence. Then a man stumbled through the doorway at 598 Hancock Street, his head split open, blood running down his collar. He fell onto the pavement as twilight settled over Brooklyn. Behind him, in the upstairs bedroom, lay the body of a 17-year-old girl. The smell of gas was already drifting through the windows. What had happened inside that respectable household on the 7th of February, 1898? Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you are from and what time you are watching. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this. Now, let us begin. It was Tuesday morning, the 7th of February, 1898, in the borough of Brooklyn, New York. Winter cold had settled over the eastern districts, and coal smoke hung low between the brownstone houses. On Hancock Street, near the corner where the grocer kept his shop, stood number 598, a neat three-story dwelling with lace curtains in the windows and a brass plate beside the door. The house belonged to William Place, a gentleman of means employed in the insurance trade. He was 43 years of age, a widower these 5 years past, and father to a daughter named Ida. She was 17, fair-haired, well-mannered, and accomplished at the piano. The household also included Mrs. Martha Place, who had been employed as housekeeper in 1893 and had become the second Mrs. Place shortly thereafter. There was also a maid, a German girl named Hilda Jans, who attended to the daily work. To the neighbours who passed on the street, it seemed a prosperous and orderly home. The curtains were always clean. The step was always swept. Nothing untoward was ever observed. Yet by evening, one would be dead, another nearly so, and the smell of gas and blood would mark that address for years to come. Martha Garretson had been born in September of 1849 in Reddington Township on the eastern side of Hunterdon County, New Jersey. Her father was named Isaac. Her mother was named Ellen. She had received a strict upbringing and had learned the trade of dressmaking. At 20 years of age, she married a man named Wesley Savacool. The marriage was not a happy one. The couple argued often. Martha gave birth to a son. They named him Ross. For a time, the child seemed to bring them closer. But by the time the boy was 3 years old, the marriage had deteriorated beyond repair. Wesley left and moved away from New Jersey. He was not heard from again. Martha was relieved that he had gone, but it left her in poor financial circumstances. She could not provide for the child. She fell into desperate poverty. Reluctantly, she agreed that Ross should be adopted by a couple named Aschenbach, who owned a business in Newark. Their own son had recently died. They informed Martha that they would rename the boy William. Although she gave up her son, the couple agreed that she would be allowed to visit him. She set up a dressmaking business with her sister, but the income was insufficient. She struggled to pay her rent. She struggled to pay her bills. In 1893, she applied for the position of housekeeper to a gentleman named William Place, who lived at number 598 Hancock Street in Brooklyn. William was a widower. He had a teenage daughter named Ida. The girl was pretty and well educated. Everyone who spoke to her found her charming. Martha took up her position in the house. At last, she was living in a comfortable environment. She had a nice room. She had a regular income. Both William and Ida made her feel welcome. She seemed very fond of Ida and would spend much time talking to her. The girl often found it easier to discuss things with the housekeeper rather than with her father. The two seemed quite close. But Martha's role was not to be a stepmother. It was to keep a well-run house. She did this in a disciplined and respectful manner. William was impressed with her work. William Place had found it difficult after the death of his wife. Now, having Martha in the house helped him to adjust. He was a pleasant and hard-working gentleman. He had a good position in the insurance trade and wanted his daughter to have all the opportunities his late wife would have wished for her. With Martha in the house, he could concentrate on his work, in the knowledge that his daughter would be cared for. It did not take long before William began to have feelings for his housekeeper. Only a few months after she joined the household, he proposed marriage. Martha accepted. It was not so long ago that she had found herself in terrible circumstances. Her husband had left. Without any financial means, she had been forced to give up her son. Now she would be mistress of a very nice house and wife to a respectable gentleman. William's relatives were not convinced that marrying Martha was the right thing to do. His brothers had advised him not to become romantically involved with the housekeeper. Although they did not know her very well, they considered her to be a stern and disciplined woman, not the caring lady that William believed he had fallen in love with. Despite their reservations, William married Martha in 1893. She became Mrs. Martha Place. For a time, everything was fine. But as the months passed, the relationship between William and Martha began to deteriorate. She was a fine housekeeper. Neighbours wondered if that was the reason he had married her. Ida was growing up. She was being noticed by young gentlemen eager to court her. Martha seemed to resent both the popularity of her stepdaughter and the relationship that Ida had with William. He doted on the girl and spent as much time as he was able in her company. She was a very good pianist and would often play in the evening while William stood by the piano and sang. They would also go out together to take photographs. William was a keen photographer. He very much liked to take pictures, and his enthusiasm was shared by his daughter, who would often accompany him. Martha did not like the father-daughter relationship that William and Ida enjoyed. She had tried to persuade her husband to let her son Ross come and live with them, but William always refused. This caused her much distress. Despite her life being relatively comfortable, Martha was not happy. She employed a housekeeper named Hilda Jans, so she no longer had the burden of running the house herself. But as her stepdaughter grew older, arguments between Martha and Ida became regular occurrences in the Place household. Martha had always been strict. She was of the opinion that Ida was becoming increasingly disobedient and disrespectful. Ida considered her stepmother to be an ill-tempered and quarrelsome woman. The more Martha tried to discipline her stepdaughter, the more Ida disobeyed her. And she did this in the knowledge that her father would invariably side with her in any disputes. Martha became particularly annoyed when her husband transferred the ownership of the house at 598 Hancock Street to his daughter. She had not forgotten how hard it was when her first husband had left. She wondered what would become of her if anything happened to William. After all, she was his wife. She thought it only right that she should inherit the house in the event of her husband's death. But William was growing increasingly tired of Martha and her erratic behaviour, especially towards his daughter. Unbeknown to Martha, he had hired a private detective to follow her in an attempt to obtain evidence which would enable him to get a divorce. However, the detective uncovered nothing suspicious. On the morning of the 7th of February, 1898, William spoke sternly to Martha. His daughter had told him some stories about her, and he wanted to know if they were true. Martha said that they were not, but William did not seem to believe her. Eventually, after an argument, he struck his wife in the face. William then went to work. Martha was very troubled by the manner in which he left. He was obviously displeased with her. She felt that there was a disagreeable atmosphere in the house. She went to see Ida in her room. It was early, and Ida was still getting dressed. Martha questioned her on why she had made up the stories and told them to her father. Ida dismissed her. By this time, Martha was furious. Her 17-year-old stepdaughter should not be talking to the wife of her father in such a disrespectful way. Martha and Ida began to shout at one another. Eventually, Martha left the room, slamming the door as she did. She went to her bedroom, but she was unable to compose herself. She was known to be a short-tempered woman, and the years of jealousy and resentment of Ida had suddenly overwhelmed her. Without thinking, she picked up a bottle of carbolic acid from the shelf and rushed back to Ida's room. As the young lady turned round, Martha threw it in her face. Ida screamed. Martha hit her. Then she smothered her face with a pillow until Ida Place was dead. All the commotion was heard by the housekeeper, who wondered what was happening. She knew that her mistress and her stepdaughter often argued, but this time it had seemed a lot worse than usual. She went to the top of the stairs, arriving just as Martha came out of Ida's bedroom. Her mistress told her to go back to the kitchen, insisting that she and Ida had just had a little quarrel. Martha then spent the rest of the day attending to the house. Not wanting her maid to discover what she had done, she sent her out on errands. She also fetched the axe from the cellar. William came home shortly after 6 o'clock in the evening. As he closed the door of the house, he turned, and from the corner of his eye, he saw Martha rushing towards him with an axe. She struck him and knocked him to the floor. She then struck him again before running upstairs. Whether she believed he was dead or not is unclear, but William managed to get to the door. He opened it and fell onto the sidewalk. He was semi-conscious and his head was bleeding. Neighbours immediately contacted the police. If you are finding this case as compelling as we are, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It truly helps us continue researching and sharing these forgotten stories from history. We also read every comment, so let us know your thoughts on this case below. Now, let us continue. Officers rushed to 598 Hancock Street. On entering the house, they noticed the distinct smell of gas. It did not take long for them to discover Mrs. Martha Place, who was unconscious. In an attempt to take her own life, she had turned on the gas taps, wrapped herself in a blanket, and covered her face with pillows. The police checked the rest of the house. In one of the upstairs bedrooms, they discovered the body of 17-year-old Ida Place lying on her bed. Martha was arrested and taken to hospital. When she was considered well enough, Martha was transported to police headquarters, where she was questioned. After making a statement, she was taken to Gates Avenue Police Court, where she was charged with the murder of her stepdaughter, Miss Ida Place, and the attempted murder of her husband, Mr. William Place. The trial of Martha Place started on the 5th of July, 1898. The press and the public found it to be of particular interest. A jealous wife who had murdered her stepdaughter and attacked her husband with an axe. Despite the seemingly overwhelming evidence against her, Martha pleaded not guilty. Her brother informed the court that when Martha was a child, she fell from a sledge and smashed her head. He said that she had never been the same since, and the accident had greatly affected her mental stability. He added that she had often complained of suffering from pains in her head. In court, Martha adopted the same attitude as she always had, upright and stern, showing no emotion and seemingly unrepentant. It was an attitude which would attract little sympathy from the jury. Witnesses, including William Place, the couple's maid, neighbours, and friends, all described a jealous, quick-tempered, and quarrelsome woman who could not accept the close relationship between her husband and his daughter. The evidence was presented methodically. The bottle of carbolic acid was placed on the table. The axe was produced and examined. The doctor who attended both victims gave his testimony. Ida Place had been suffocated. William Place had received 2 severe blows to the head. He had been fortunate to survive. When the trial ended, the jury was sent out to deliberate. They returned 4 hours later to find the defendant, Martha Place, guilty of murder. The judge sentenced her to death. She was taken to Sing Sing prison to await her fate. Her sentence was appealed, and a report was commissioned to ascertain if Martha was indeed insane. The report concluded that she was not. Governor Theodore Roosevelt refused to commute her sentence. The date was set. The preparations were made. The apparatus was tested. Martha Place would be the first woman to die in the electric chair. On the 20th of March, 1899, at 11 o'clock in the morning, Martha M. Place was led into the execution chamber at Sing Sing prison. She was 44 years of age. She walked slowly, supported by two matrons. Her face was pale, her hands were bound. The witnesses were already seated. The warden stood by the apparatus. The room was silent, save for the sound of footsteps on stone. Martha was placed in the chair. The straps were fastened. The electrodes were attached. The black hood was lowered over her head. At 11 minutes past 11, the current was applied. Her body stiffened. The current was stopped. It was applied again. After 4 minutes, the prison doctor pronounced her dead. She became the first woman to be executed in the electric chair in the United States of America. The newspapers reported the execution in great detail. Some expressed sympathy for the condemned woman, noting her difficult life and troubled mind. Others felt that justice had been properly served. The debate about capital punishment continued. The debate about executing women continued. But Martha Place was already gone, and the world moved on. Her husband, William, fully recovered from the attack. He lived quietly for the remainder of his life. He never remarried. He never spoke publicly about what had happened in his home on the 7th of February. He died in 1923 at the age of 71. The house at 598 Hancock Street stood for many years after. New families moved in. Children played on the step. Lace curtains hung in the windows. But those who knew the history would cross to the other side of the street when they passed. They would not look at the upstairs window where Ida Place had died. They would not look at the doorway where William Place had fallen. The street carried on. The grocer's shop remained. The coal smoke rose. The bells rang the hours. Life continued as it always had. In time, even the memory faded. The file was sealed and placed in storage. The newspapers yellowed. The witnesses died. Martha Place became a footnote in legal history, remembered only as the first woman executed in the electric chair. Her son, Ross, the boy she had given up for adoption, lived his life under a different name. Whether he ever knew what became of his mother is not recorded. The house at 598 Hancock Street no longer stands. The street has changed. The names are forgotten. But on cold February mornings, when the smoke hangs low between the buildings, some still remember what happened there over a century ago.